And you're welcome, Minister Monaghan. I suppose every autumn when students are about to go back to school, we, or any of us that live in rural areas, are inundated with contact from parents distressed over the fact that their child hasn't got a school bus ticket for the coming school year. And they're only notified of this maybe within a week or two of returning to school. And I suppose it mostly applies to post-primary school, but it can apply to primary school as well. And it's based on the department rules which set down that you have to live not less than 3.2 kilometres from your local primary school, 4.8 kilometres from your local secondary school, and be attending your nearest school to be deemed eligible and therefore get a school bus ticket. Now, I know there were what were called temporary alleviation measures drafted in 2019 and introduced then, and they've been in place since, which allowed students in second level schools attend their second nearest school, like get a bus ticket for their second, if they were attending their second nearest school. They did have to pay for it, even if they had a medical card, but at least they got and were assured of a school bus ticket. But it meant that all the other students there were waiting to see if there was space on the bus so that they could get a concessionary school place. And this is very stressful for parents. I mean, I know where I live, for example, there are 4 schools in Cavan, 2 in Granard, 1 in Oldcastle, and they're all within a similar distance of each other from where I live. So if my children were attending any of those schools, they would deem to be, you know, their 3rd or 4th nearest school, even though they're all at a very similar distance. And this time last year as well, or last August, 18 students in my area who had bus tickets on a bus going to one of the schools in Cavan were told within 2 weeks of the school they had no bus ticket. Some of them had had bus tickets for 4 years, and suddenly they were left without transport to school. And this, again, was very stressful for parents. Parents were working, they had younger children that they had to get to creche or primary school, and it meant they were scrambling for a number of weeks to try and get their children into school. It was resolved after some time, but I don't know why it couldn't have been resolved before they were due to go back to school. In the meantime, a school transport review has been carried out. It was published early last year, I think it was roughly around February of last year, and it made a number of recommendations, which was to reduce the school distance from, for primary school from 3.2 kilometres to 2 kilometres and then to 1 kilometre, and for post-primary to 2 kilometres from the 4.8. But it was also, more importantly, to abolish the nearest school rule. So my question is today, are those recommendations actually being implemented in the 2025-26 school year? And if so, it means that practically all students applying for a school bus ticket will be deemed eligible, which means then we need a much increased capacity. So therefore, has the Department of Education invested in the school fleet within Bus Éireann? I know they will have to rely on private contractors to provide some of the services as they do now, but there aren't sufficient private contractors to provide a service for the increased capacity if these implementations, or if these recommendations are implemented in this school year. And there's also a problem with getting drivers, so I'm just wondering how that has been addressed, because both acquiring additional buses and the drivers to drive the buses requires planning. It can't be done in a matter of a few weeks. Now, I know the portal is currently open now for students to pay for their school bus ticket or put in their medical card details, so they will know fairly soon how many students are applying for bus tickets. But the planning needs to have started actually long before this to ensure that there is sufficient capacity to accommodate all of the students that are requiring a school bus place. So thank you.
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Senator, for your question in relation to school transport. The School Transport 2030 report, which was published in early 2024, marks the largest review of the school transport system since it was established back in the late 1960s. And I am committed to working to achieve the report's recommendation of expanding access to the scheme so that an additional 100,000 pupils can be carried by 2030, and to continue to improve the scheme so that it provides for a valued service for those families who rely on it, whilst providing value for money for the Exchequer as well. The recommended changes to the future operation of the scheme included the expansion of the current eligibility criteria, addressing current operational challenges challenges and moving towards better integration with public transport where possible. A phased implementation of the review's recommendations began at the start of the current school year, that was in September 2024 to 2025. As indicated at the time of the launch of the review, a number of pilots were trialled in 2024-2025 school year in conjunction with the Department of Transport and Bus Éireann. As also indicated at the time, it was intended that following closure of the application process for 2024-2025 school year, consideration would be given to further potential pilot projects around the country. And to that end, I note that the Senator said that the portal is currently opened and are awaiting the figures when that will be completed. A total of 14 pilot projects are underway this year. These pilots are currently being evaluated and they will provide a valuable insight into the impact of increased demand on the scheme, the potential for integrating public transport, and that's not always possible in rural areas that the Senator spoke about, and indeed where I come from myself. But operations to promote more sustainable models of transport. The findings from the evaluation will guide the planning and implementation need for additional rollout or revised school transport scheme. Bus Éireann's family portal is now open to accept new transport applications for the 2025-2026 school year, and planning for the 2025-2026 school year is well underway between the Department of Education and Bus Éireann at the moment.
Thank you, Minister. Look, obviously it makes sense where possible to integrate school bus services with public services, but as you say, that's not always possible because where I live is very rural, and as you said, where you live as well. But I mean, for environmental reasons, it is important, I think, to take as many students out of cars and onto buses as is possible. And also, it gives young people, it gets them into the habit of using bus services, which hopefully will become a lifelong habit, and that they will continue to use public bus services and train services, etc., where they exist. But it still doesn't indicate whether increased capacity will be put on the school bus service. I mean, as I said, the integration into public services, well and good. We also have a problem with drivers, and I know Bus Éireann have a rule about drivers having to retire at 70, yet if you drive a private bus you don't have to retire at 70, if you drive a truck you don't have to retire at 70, so I don't know why that rule can't be changed to allow bus drivers to continue to work after the age of 70 if they so choose, because I know a number of bus drivers who do not want to retire at 70 and were forced to. So I mean, I just hope that there will be increased capacity and that all students will be accommodated come September or come August when they return to school, and that they're not left in the situation which they have been in previous years with no school bus service in the days in the run-up to return to school.
Sure. Senator, for the question. I suppose, you know, just the 25th of April this year is the final day for families that can apply for on the portal. So it's important that that date is out there and that families know it. And indeed, most families do at this stage, families that are availing of it. When those figures come to hand, we will then review what is necessary because, you know, and I know that families right up to, and, you know, our experience from the August onwards, you know, they're getting the routes and so forth, and then the challenges come in, and it takes some time to work through it. My commitment is that we will work with the review, we will work with the pilot projects, but we will work very hard to make sure that we can accommodate as many students as is possible. The flashpoints, of course, are second level, but there is a number of issues in relation to primary school. I take the point that you've made in relation to over 70s is something that I want to review ourselves in the department and to get some clarity on it. But I would like to remind you that we are committed to increasing the school transport, and the recommendations that were in the Expanding Access Scheme, which was published in 2024, we will be working towards that to make sure that we implement it in as fair as possible and ensure that students have, as so far as we can, provide transport for them.